Hi everyone, it's Alyse from Spicewalla, and today is a very special day. My favorite cook, my dad, is going to be joining us. This is my quintessential childhood comfort food, chorizo and potatoes made by my dad. I've never been able to get them to taste like his, so I figured let's go ahead and bring him in, walk me through it, give me all his tips and tricks, and that way you guys at home can also enjoy this amazing meal. Hey Dad.
Hi, how are you doing?
Okay?
Pretty good. Having a good day so far.
All right. I don't know what you do to this, but your potatoes are always really crispy but soft in the middle, and I think I just mess with it too much, so I need you to just like teach me your Jedi tricks of how to get this really good. So first let's talk ingredients. I have 5 peeled russet potatoes. Is that enough? How many do you usually make?
Yeah, that's probably right. I estimate probably if they're medium potatoes, a couple per person, or if they're larger, probably 1 to 1.5 per person, something like that.
Okay. The other major ingredient in this is chorizo. When I was growing up, you always made this with chorizo that you would get at the store.
Right.
So
and my family still makes it with that. The issue I had with it, I'm kind of a stickler with a lot of grease in this dish, and also the sausage tended to be a little grizzly at times and had a lot of fat in it. We've always used Jimmy Dean, for our breakfast sausage, and it's probably the best, as far as I'm concerned, out there that I've ever found, as far as never having too much grease and having good taste. Yeah. And no grizzle in it. So that's why I started using it.
Well, I think it's really smart, Dad, because, when people make chorizo at home, they start with ground pork and then they add coriander and cumin and like all of these other spices. But usually breakfast sausage already has those spices in it. So it's actually really smart to use breakfast sausage and then just add the chili powder. And you have chorizo that's less greasy and it's easier to find, obviously, if you can't find chorizo in your grocery store. Today, I'm going to use this Spicewalla Ancho chili powder, and I buy it in this giant container because I use this all the time. I put it in chili, I put it on tacos. I love this stuff. It's got like a really nice smoky flavor. It's got a good kick of heat.
It should work great. Yeah.
I think so. First thing is cut the potatoes. Now, I already peeled these. But what we're going to do is cut them lengthwise.
Well, what I do is I put the flat side down and then cut one of the halves in two again.
Okay. Oh, you do?
No, lengthwise, yes.
Oh, see?
And then what I do with each one of those halves, I just start running the knife down from one end to the other, about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch in width, because the thicker you make it, the longer it's going to take for the potatoes to cook.
You want it pretty thin so it'll cook quicker. So let's see. I don't know if you can see that.
That's perfect.
Okay.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So Dad, was this something that you ate growing up too? Did Grandma used to make this? Or did the girls make it, your sisters?
We used to make our own sausage at one point. My dad had, chickens and pigs and all that. So anytime we'd butcher a pig, we'd make our own chorizo. We didn't make it that often, but it was kind of a treat for breakfast, especially if you have company. You can make a big pan of this, and it's kind of like a side dish to eggs and bacon or whatever you have for breakfast. So they've been making it for years, but not an everyday or even once a week type of meal, probably once a month. Yeah, I learned all my cooking and being hungry enough that I would stand around the stove and watch my sisters and my mom cook.
One thing that I love about all of your sisters is they cut everything in their hand.
Right.
They have one knife. They will slice the potato in their hand. They'll peel it by hand.
Right.
Do you do that?
No, I can't. I never learned that. I'm the old school. I mean, I'm new school, I guess. I use a potato peeler.
Yeah.
And then I have to do it this way because it just seems like it takes longer to do it the way they do it.
I know, but they're so fast.
Yeah, they are. They've been doing it for years.
All right, I only cut 4 of these potatoes, but I feel like it's enough.
That should be enough for a couple of people, 2 to 3 people.
Like, I feel like a big part of this too is you don't want to overcrowd the pan too much.
Right.
Because you
Now
don't
this is
want it to get a nice crispy
right.
skin on the outside.
And this is something that I've always done too, that I've never seen very many people do is, of course, potatoes have a lot of starch and they tend to stick together, stick to the pan with a lot of starch. So I will sometimes put them in a colander and run them under cold water after I slice them up. And that kind of takes a little of the starch out of them, and they're not sticking together, sticking to the bottom of the pan as much.
That's very smart, Dad.
Another little trick I do is, along with seasoning the actual potatoes after you put them in the pan with salt and pepper, I also will put a little bit of salt in the oil after I put the oil in the pan and it starts warming. I put a little bit of salt and shake it on the bottom, and that kind of keeps it from sticking too.
I've never heard of that before. Okay. All right, I'm gonna rinse these real quick. Yeah, I definitely think that's what my problem has been in the past, is I can never get the potatoes to not stick to the bottom. And I don't have a non-stick pan. This is a stainless steel pan, and I was a little concerned about that, but I think we'll be all right.
When I make mine, I always do it in a cast iron. For some reason, it seems like it cooks hotter and better, tends to hold its heat better, and it controls the amount of heat.
Yeah.
But the one of the keys too that you're going to find out about this is the timing of the lid. You have to find a pan that has a good fitting lid. And the first part, probably the first 15 or 20 minutes of this, is cooking the potatoes down so they start getting a little tender by using steam and heat combined. And that's what the lid does, is it does that. And then you take the lid off during the second part of the cooking, and that's when you get your crispness, is whenever they start cooking without the lid on it.
Okay, so I'm cooking on an induction stove, so I can't use cast iron on this, but anybody at home, if you have a cast iron, also if you have a gas stove, it seems to work a lot better, but we'll make it work here. If you don't have those things, we'll show you how to do it that way too. Okay, so I'm gonna put oil in here, and you usually use vegetable oil?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I don't have vegetable oil, but I have avocado oil. You basically just want to use any like high temperature oil. You don't want to use olive oil. You don't want to use butter because it'll burn, because you're going to cook this for a good amount of time.
And when you were rinsing the potatoes, one thing that you might want to mention, or I want to mention to people, is when if you rinse off your potatoes after you slice them in a colander like that, just be careful that there's going to be water in there and it's going to splash up. So be careful of that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. I'm actually going to put these out on a towel and.
Right. It's probably a good idea.
Thing, like, I don't know if you've ever made potato latkes before, or like potato pancakes, but it's the same kind of method where you want to rinse out all the starch, and then you also want to make sure you dry them pretty good before frying them. Because I think it keeps them from getting crispy too if they're wet on the outside.
Right.
And you don't have to go overkill here, but you want to just make sure you get any excess moisture out of there. What temperature am I putting my pan on, Dad?
To start, you can put it at like a medium high to medium, somewhere in that range. And then let your oil warm up a little bit. And like I said, if you want to put a little bit of salt, shake a little bit of salt.
Right. Your trick.
On the bottom.
So do you wait till the oil's hot, or you go ahead and put it in while it's heating up?
I put it in before, yeah.
Like just a good pinch?
Right. Just to cover the bottom. Somehow it forms like a barrier.
Yeah.
Keep it from sticking as much.
Okay.
I usually throw a potato in, or if it sizzles, then it's ready to go.
Okay.
In the pan.
I'm gonna go ahead and get my sausage ready.
What I do is I just grab it with my fingers and put it in there in chunks on top of the potatoes.
So you put the potatoes in first.
Right.
And then we're gonna.
Then I put the sausage chunks on top of the potatoes.
Okay. Right away.
Right. I put them all in together at the same time. The potatoes, the sausage, and then the powdered chili. And then what I do is when I put the potatoes in it by themselves, I season them with a little salt and pepper too. Yeah, that's what you want to hear, is a little bit of a crisp when you put them in, or a little bit of a sizzle, I mean.
See, Dad, I've always done this backwards. I always want it to get crispy first, and then I cover them. But it makes way more sense to steam them first and then crisp them up at the end.
Because the lid does two things. It's going to break up the sausage. It's going to make the potatoes start cooking on the inside and not being as firm as they are now. and the chili powder will all meld into the whole mixture at the same time that it's cooking. So I would just season them a little bit with salt and pepper, and then you can go ahead and start putting the sausage in.
So we're just putting the sausage in chunks on top of the...
Right, just in big chunks all the way around the top of the potatoes.
Am I doing the whole pound of sausage?
I wouldn't, because if you had done probably 6 potatoes that size that you had, 6 to 7, I probably would have put them all in. But you kind of have to gauge it by, you want about an equal spread of potatoes and sausage. Okay.
That looking good?
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to start adding our chili powder.
Yeah. And like I said, as far as measurements, I do most of this just by eyesight, but I would say probably a couple of tablespoons would be fine. And it's all to taste. If that's got some kick to it, then some people might not put as much. People like kick.
That's about a tablespoon and a half that I just put in there. That looks pretty
okay.
good. Do you go ahead and stir all this together now?
I don't at this point. What I do is I go ahead and put the lid on, and then I just start letting it sit. And it's probably going to be 10 to 15-minute increments that you'll actually take the lid off, mix it up, and kind of start breaking up the chunks of sausage. And then you also want to get a spatula and turn the bottom portions over to the top so that they start cooking. And then after about 2 or 3 times that you check it, I also get a spatula and get one of the potato pieces that are in there and kind of push on it to see if it's getting done. Okay. You don't want it to be, don't want it to be hard. You want it to be soft to where it breaks pretty easy in half. Yes. Okay. And then you know that it's done with the lid part of it.
I have the ultimate potato flipper here. I use this for everything. I use it for pancakes. I use it for fish. I use it for stuff like this when you need to get like under something because it's really thin.
Yeah.
It's called a fish spatula, but it's awesome. So I turned this down a little bit, like a little under medium. Is that good?
Yeah, that's fine. You'll turn it even more down after you take the lid off when it starts browning because you don't want it to burn.
Okay.
But this is kind of the boring part. Usually when I'm making this, of course, you're making eggs and other things to go with your breakfast. So I would be doing that.
Well, I've got some refried beans and some tortillas here, so.
Oh, okay. That'll be a good breakfast.
Yeah.
Or brunch, I guess.
Yeah. That's what I love about this dish, though, is you can eat it anytime.
Right.
And usually we always have leftovers, and then you just heat them up the next day, throw a fried egg on it, or just eat it with a tortilla.
Right.
I think something that I usually do, like as soon as I put that chili powder in there, I wanted to get in there and start stirring it. And I think that's something I noticed that you don't do. Like you just kind of let it go. And then once it starts cooking down a little bit, then you start kind of gently just flipping it instead of stirring it around in the pan.
Right. Yeah, I do very little flipping. I just, stirring. I do the flip part from the bottom to the top so that the bottom part isn't getting too crisp right away or too done compared to the top.
Because mine, it always just turns into like a potato-y mush. It's like almost like smashed potatoes. They don't keep their shape, and I think that's why. And
that could be a combination of leaving the lid on there too long and they get too mushy, the potatoes. Where that's kind of a key is you have to kind of gauge the potato to find out when the right texture is that you barely put pressure on it and it breaks in two or cuts in two. Right. And you know it's starting to get done. And then it'll cook another 10 or 15 minutes without the lid, so you don't have to worry about them being undercooked. They'll just start getting a nice crisp shell on them, which is good.
Yeah, I can see there's a ton of condensation on the top of the pan right now, so it's getting a good steam.
It's been about 5 minutes. What you can do is check it, and then what I do is I start crushing the sausage and on top, kind of into smaller pieces.
Okay.
And then you can start turning the bottom part up and making sure that it gets all mixed in real good.
So flipping?
You can do it, yeah. See what the bottom side looks like. It's not going to be brown or anything unless it's too high.
I can tell it's just...
But you can tell the bottom ones are probably starting to get a little more done than the top.
Yeah, I can just see that the bottom is like just starting to get brown, but not crispy. It's like just taking on a little bit of color. Because it's kind of frying in that as the fat renders out of the bacon, out of the sausage. Am I not doing it too much?
No, you're fine. Just all you're doing is just making sure that the ones on top are getting on the bottom and getting closer to the heat.
Okay.
And then as far as the size of the sausage, that's again another preference. My wife likes, of course, big chunks of meat when she makes stuff like this.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the opposite. I would probably over compensate on mashing them down, stuff like that. But I just think it looks better in the mix. And you can also tell if you have the right content of both potatoes to sausage better when you mash them down a little more. But you can probably get a good idea if the mixture is like 50-50, then you probably put in the right amount of sausage. And next time you stir it, you can probably start checking the texture of them and see if they're starting to get done in the middle of potatoes and stuff like that.
Okay. So this usually takes I guess it depends on how big of a batch you're making, but it usually takes 30 minutes or so. 20?
Yeah, 30 to 45 minutes, something like that. Because I guess with the lid on, you're going to turn it probably 2 or 3 times and take the lid off, and then you're going to keep doing it for about the same length of time without the lid. And it all depends on how crispy you want it and how hungry you are. You could eat it, probably a few minutes after you took the lid off if the potatoes are done. But I just like to get that crispness on the bottom. So if you do it a couple of times for about 5 to 10 minutes cooking like that and flip them, then you start seeing when you flip them that little crust on the potatoes that you want. Some of the times when it would stick, some of my best thing when I'm putting it away or after I put it in another pan to serve it, there'll be crispy chunks. Like you were saying with your spatula that has that nice edge, I will take some of that off the bottom and pick it up and eat it like potato chips.
Yeah.
It's really good.
So good.
Yeah.
Also, if you have leftover fat in the pan, you could fry your egg in that.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, I can't wait to eat this. All right, do you think I'm ready for another?
Yeah, you can check it. Like I said, you can check the tenderness of the potatoes and see if you can cut into them pretty easily with your spatula. And if not, then you probably need to go one more round.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit of stickage, but it's not bad. It's letting up right when I start stirring.
Right.
I can definitely tell a difference with this method after rinsing the potatoes. I don't think that's something I've done before. Take
one of the potatoes to the bottom of the pan and see if you can slice through it pretty easily or eat it, one of the two. Still a little hard?
It's still a little hard.
Is the handle hot? Can you put it up to the screen and they can look at it?
Yeah, I'm hosting the show now. So it's taken on some color.
Yeah.
Potatoes are still a little hard, but it's cooking down pretty good. There's a good amount of fat in the bottom of the pan too.
Yeah, looks good. Yep, I would go one more session with the lid for about another 5 to 7 minutes, and you should be ready to take it off and let them start crisping up.
I think I'm gonna add a little bit more ancho because I can taste it, but I want more.
Right.
That's why I always like tasting as I'm cooking because I also feel like it needs a little more salt.
Yeah, that's when you can start tasting for your taste. If you do put more chili powder in, just be sure that you do it while you're putting the lid on it, because somehow it tends to condensate with the steam or whatever and get into everything. Otherwise, it'll just start clumping up. If you just put it in there after you've taken the lid off, the chili powder will clump up on you and you'll have to break it up.
That's true.
And I was going to mention about your chorizo. I know the brand you held up is the kind you can find in most grocery stores.
Yeah.
And some of it, but it's called chorizo. Some people buy it thinking it's chorizo. But just remember that the real Mexican chorizo has a Z in it, whereas chorizo, I think, is Portuguese or something like that.
Oh, really?
And you'll find it, and it's not the same flavor. If you don't want to go through all this with the sausage and all that and just put the chorizo in there, all you have to do is break up the chorizo into the top of the potatoes like we did, put the lid on it, and it'll start breaking down too, and you can mash it up and mix it in with the potatoes.
Yeah,
so
really it's the same method, except we just don't add the ancho. But what I like about adding the spice yourself is you can control how much, you can control how spicy, you can taste it as you go, whereas if you add chorizo, it's kind of like it's done,
Right, yeah.
All right, are we ready again?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's looking good. Let me try one.
Okay. And you could probably leave the lid off and then just let it cook like that for about another 10 minutes, and it should start giving you that crisp.
It needs more salt, though. I've added a lot of
Yeah,
salt.
it is. That's one of the things about it. I don't know what it is about chili taste or chili powder or whatever in foods. It always seems like you always keep adding more salt.
Yeah. All right. So at this point, we're going to kind of like spread it evenly on the bottom of the pan because we're going to start crisping, right?
Right.
So you want to get as much like surface area touching the potato as you can so it can start to get crispy. And I'm keeping it on 4 right now. I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm keeping it on like medium low. So how do you know it's done? Like when are you like, that's exactly what I'm looking for?
You could actually eat it now, but like I
Right.
said, I would recommend leaving without the lid on for at least 10 minutes.
I feel like if you're going to go this far, like don't give up now.
Right. Right.
You want that crispiness on the outside.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so good.
Because once you taste one of those pieces with the crispness on it, you're going to say, I want all of it like that.
Oh, yeah.
Now you're making me hungry. I'm going to have to go
I know.
downstairs.
I wish you were here to eat with me. I think this dish is what really made Kevin want to be a part of our family. The first time you made this, he talked about it for like a week.
Yeah, and I still remember that. That was probably the best batch that I ever made was at your house that day when Kevin first tried it out.
Yeah. You know, people always ask, like, what's the one thing from your childhood that's like your ultimate comfort food? And it's no doubt this. And it's funny because you just think like sausage and potatoes, like what's the big deal? First of all, the way you make it is so good. Like we talked about the texture of like the crispy and the soft and the sausage and the heat. But also there's so much more flavor in here than you would think.
Right.
And I love that it's just 2 ingredients, but it's so good. You can make so much of it and keep eating it. I think
and there's so many different versions. I mean, it wasn't just the chorizo we used to make as a breakfast food.
Yeah.
You could mix, instead of chorizo and the potatoes, we used to take Spam that a lot of people either, that's kind of a hate or love
I
type.
love Spam.
I do too. My Darlene hates it. But you could take a can of Spam, dice it up and put it in there, and it gives it just great flavor the same way. Also, my mom sometimes would take leftover hot dogs. She would cut up the hot dogs and throw them in the potatoes when she cooked them. So there's just different things you can do in there with different proteins that just makes it, you know, a dish by itself, basically.
So potatoes, I feel like in your family
they were a staple
every day.
I mean, growing up, when you have 8 kids that you've got to feed, you got to find cheap way to feed them. And one of them was potatoes and beans. So.
All right, do you think I'm ready?
Yeah, I think so. You can turn it and then see if you're getting a little bit of a crust. Yeah, I can tell it is.
Yeah, it's getting the crust.
And then you'll see it when you turn them over, the little pieces of potato.
I can see it a little bit.
And that would be where you make your call. But after you sit standing over it and you're hungry, you tend to say, okay, I'm ready. I'm done with this. So you could really eat it at any time.
Yeah, it's not as crispy as I want yet. How do you know? You just like sense it? Yeah,
you just know that based on the last time you turn them, if they're starting to stick too much, that you better check them a little faster.
Okay.
But if you can't see any yet, maybe you're not leaving it alone.
Oh, no. Here, I'm going to show you.
I know.
All right. That's what you're looking for.
Yes,
a little
bit of
skin on the outside. Man, this really does take a lot of patience.
It does. It takes time. Like I said, normally when you're making a big breakfast, you've got other things going on. You could be making bacon on a griddle along with eggs and pancakes or whatever. So,
but this is where I struggle with this recipe because I just want to eat it. And so I rush it. I turn it up on high, and then I'm burning stuff. It's sticking. The potatoes are all crumbling. So this is good. You ever turn it up at the end just to like get that little extra hit? Yeah,
you can too. Especially if you're hungry and you don't want to wait as long.
Hungry. This is the point where I'm like,
that 5-minute interval will turn into about 2 or 3. You need to check them and turn the heat up.
Because if I burn this, I would be so sad.
Yeah, it looks like it's looking good.
Yeah, it's getting there. Here's another little crispy piece.
Yeah, it looks good. You dropped one behind your cooker.
I just dropped it in my hair. I don't want it to drop on the floor because I want to eat it.
You got it.
Yeah, it's starting to get real crispy now.
Yeah.
I think it's good to turn up that heat at the very end.
You don't want to get too much, then you'll end up leaving most of it on the bottom of your pan.
No, that's what I'm starting to notice. All right, I think we're ready. You kind of see it's taken on, there's like some brown spots on the potatoes where it's crispy.
I can see them. I can see them on some of the edges of the potatoes.
There is some stuff to the bottom you can see, but it's coming up pretty easy when I kind of get in there.
Right.
So like you said, I kind of like that stuff in there. So this is really hot, so I'm going to let it just hang out for a second. All right, I've got some refried beans here. Or you could do just like cooked pinto beans too. And then we've got a couple warm tortillas. So I like to put the beans on first. And then I think I'm actually going to just sprinkle a little more ancho on top.
Yeah, that would be good.
Tiny little bit. All right. I wish you were here with me.
I know. I can almost taste it. And like I said, if you wanted to make a real breakfast brunch burrito with a little larger tortillas, you could put the scrambled eggs on top of all that, or on top of the beans and then the potatoes. That would be good.
Yeah, or even if you don't have tortillas, I like putting the chorizo and potatoes in a bowl and then frying an egg and just putting it on top. The ancho gives it a really good flavor. I think you should try the ancho next time. Let me know what you think.
I'll have to try that.
Well, how did I do? You can't taste it to know.
It looks good.
Yeah.
So does it taste the same as mine?
Never. It never tastes the same as yours. I don't know what you do. I think you're leaving out some tips.
Nope. Everything's the same.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I don't know. You work your magic. I don't know how to replicate it, but one day.
Well, it's years and years. You just got to keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dad, for helping me. And
sure. Next
time we get together, we'll definitely have to make this.
All right. Looking forward to it.
Thanks. Love you.
All right. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Thank you again to my dad for showing me his infamous chorizo and potatoes recipe and taking the time to walk me through it. Please subscribe below, go to our blog to get the recipe, and we'll see you next time. Bye!